Imagine for a moment carrying this invisible blueprint, something etched into you during childhood. And this blueprint, it silently guides, well, almost everything, every decision, every relationship, every fear you hold on.
Right. It's pervasive.
What if those struggles we face as adults, that difficulty trusting people or that sudden panic about being abandoned, maybe even that little voice that tells you to sabotage things when they're going well?
Yeah, self-sabotage.
What if they aren't actually character flaws? What if they're just echoes from a past that never really got...
That's a really crucial way to frame it.
And this deep dive we're doing today, it's not only about the big, obvious things, the dramatic events we usually think of as trauma.
Right, not just the capital T trauma.
Exactly. Often, the deepest wounds come from what you might call invisible absences.
Ah, I like that phrasing.
Yeah, like the absence of feeling consistently safe. Or the absence of really being seen, validated, or maybe the absence of just unconditional love.
Those subtle lacks can be incredibly damaging.
So our mission today is to try and uncover this hidden architecture of childhood trauma. We really want to explore how it can actually, rewire the brain.
The neurological impact.
Yeah, and how it distorts our sense of who we are and how it quietly shapes the adults we become. But here's the hopeful part. Awareness, just know it, is the first critical step towards, well, liberation.
Absolutely. Awareness is key.
So this is a journey into those unconscious forces that can silently run our lives. And we're drawing a lot of insight today from the work presented on the Psyche YouTube channel.
It's really valuable work they're doing there. And it's amazing how common these experiences actually are. You might think trauma is only for extreme cases, right? But the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, the ACE study, it revealed something quite staggering.
Yeah, I remember seeing those stats.
Over 60%. Over 60% of adults reported at least one major traumatic event in their childhood.
60%? That's huge.
It is. And we're not just talking about obvious abuse or neglect. It also includes things like emotional abandonment or maybe growing up with parents struggling with mental illness or addiction.
Things that might not look like trauma from the outside.
Exactly. So it really shifts the definition, doesn't it? It moves beyond just what happened to you and focuses much more on what happened inside you because of it.
That makes sense. The internal experience.
Precisely. And Dr. Gabor Maté, his work has been so insightful here. He puts it very clearly. Trauma isn't the event itself.
Right.
It's the disconnection it creates inside us. It's not just being hurt. It's being hurt and then being left alone with that pain.
Alone. Yeah.
So to survive, a child learns, often unconsciously, to suppress emotion, to sort of fragment parts of their soul, you could say. The unspoken rules become, don't cry, don't speak up, don't feel.
You just shut down parts of yourself.
You do. And here's the paradox, the really tricky part. Those very adaptations that helped you survive childhood, they can become a kind of prison in adulthood.
How so? Give us an example.
Okay, think about a child with a really unpredictable parent. Warm 1 minute, cold and distant the next. That child learns to be hypervigilant, constantly scanning, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Always on edge.
Exactly. So as an adult, this might show up as chronic anxiety, maybe obsessive thoughts, or just this deep inability to ever truly relax, even when things are perfectly fine.
Because their body learned that state of alert.
Their body learned it, became the default setting. Or consider a child who felt invisible, never really praised, never truly seen for who they were.
Okay.
That person might grow up to be a relentless perfectionist, always chasing the next achievement to finally feel worthy. Or the opposite could happen. They might become so convinced they're not good enough that they struggle to even try things.
Wow. Two sides of the same coin almost.
In a way, yes. And the key thing to remember is that these aren't weaknesses. They were brilliant coping mechanisms, brilliant self-protective strategies crafted by a child's brain doing its absolute best to survive an environment that felt unsafe or invalidating.
Brilliant coping mechanism. I like that framing. It really connects with Carl Jung's ideas about the unconscious, doesn't it?
It really does.
He talked about our shadow, those parts of ourselves we repress or don't want to own, and how much of that gets shaped in childhood.
The roots run deep.
Jung had that powerful quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life."
That gives me chills every time. It's so true.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many patterns in our adult life, maybe repeating the same kinds of relationships or feeling stuck in the same old pain, how much of that is us just unknowingly playing out scenarios because some inner child part is still trying to fix her?
It's not just in our heads, is it? This isn't just psychological. No. When we talk about childhood trauma, we're talking about the nervous system. The body remembers. The body keeps the score, as the famous book title says.
All right, Bessel van der Kolk.
Exactly. Trauma isn't just stored in your memories up here. It gets encoded in your cells, in your nervous system's responses. A child growing up in fear often develops what we call a dysregulated nervous system.
Dysregulated, what does that look like?
Well, imagine your body's internal alarm system is just off. It's either stuck in the on position, that's hyperarousal, where you feel constantly anxious, maybe panicky, your thoughts racing.
Okay, fight or flight.
Right. Or it can get stuck in the off position that's hyperarousal, feeling numb, disconnected, maybe depressed, like you're just shut down.
Freeze or collapse.
Precisely. And this kind of internal chaos, swinging between these states, can lead to one of the most painful outcomes, self-sabotage.
We mentioned that earlier. Why does that happen?
Think about it. If your nervous system really learned deep down that safety is actually dangerous somehow, maybe closeness led to pain, maybe success brought unwanted pressure or judgment, then even if your conscious mind desperately wants that good thing, the relationship, the promotion, the dream, your nervous system will hit the brakes. It will reject it to keep you safe, according to its old map.
Wow. So your body is trying to protect you, but it's using an outdated program.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Which means healing isn't just about thinking positive thoughts or using willpower. It's much deeper. It's about reprogramming those deep layers of your psyche and your body, building a new internal map where safety feels safe, trust feels possible, and you feel inherently worthy.
And you said that journey starts with awareness. So for everyone listening, maybe take a moment right now. Ask yourself some honest.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Like, what did I have to push down, suppress just to get by in my childhood? Or what parts of me, maybe my feelings, my needs, weren't really welcomed back then?
Good questions.
And maybe where in my life right now do I feel stuck, caught in patterns that just seem beyond?
Just sitting with those questions without judgment, incredibly revealing.
Your honest answers might just open some doors, lead you back to that child inside who's still waiting to be seen, heard, and just held.
And as we go deeper, it's so important to remember this. The most dangerous trauma is often the one we don't even recognize. Because when pain becomes familiar, when dysfunction feels normal, we stop questioning. We just accept it as the way things are.
It becomes normalized.
Exactly. But listen, you are not broken. You adapt. You did what you had to do. And now you have the power as an adult to look at those adaptations and decide which ones still serve you and which ones it's time to gently unlearn.
That's empowering, unlearning the adapt. So we often focus on the big T's traumas, right? Physical abuse, abandonment, violence, things that are undeniable. But you mentioned earlier these subtle, invisible traumas. Can you expand on that? What falls into that category?
Absolutely. These are often more insidious because they're harder to name, harder to point to. We're talking about things like emotional neglect. Maybe your physical needs were met, but your emotional world was ignored.
Like being told, stop crying, or it's not a big...
Exactly. Or maybe love felt conditional, like you had to earn it through achievements or by being good. Chronic criticism is another one, constantly feeling like you're not measuring up. Parentification is a big one too. That's where a child is forced into adult roles too soon, maybe caring for a parent or younger siblings, missing out on their own childhood.
Taking on responsibilities they weren't ready for.
Right. Or simply growing up in an environment where your feelings were never valid, where you learned that what you felt didn't matter or was wrong. These subtle wounds, precisely because they're invisible, often cut the deepest.
And how does a child make sense of that?
Well, that's the tricky part. A child's brain is naturally egocentric. That just means they see the world through their own lens and tend to personalize everything. So a child doesn't have the capacity to think, oh, my parent is emotionally unavailable because they're struggling with their own depression or unresolved issues.
They wouldn't.
No. Instead, the child's internal conclusion is often, there must be something wrong with me. I must be unlovable.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking.
It is. And that single belief, I am unlovable or I am not good enough, starts to warp their entire sense of identity. Let's take emotional neglect again. You had food, shelter, clothes. The basics were covered.
Right. So maybe you think, I shouldn't complain.
Exactly. But every time you cried, you were shut down. Every time you were scared, toughen up. Your needs felt like an inconvenience, your feelings a burden. So you learned a really dangerous lesson. My authentic feelings are wrong. My needs are too much. I have to hide my true self to be accepted or loved.
And that becomes the blueprint for adult relationships?
It absolutely does. As an adult, you might constantly ignore your own need, become a people pleaser, terrified of saying no. You might avoid conflict like the plague, or feel intense guilt just for asking for help.
Why?
Because that inner child part still believes deep down that love is conditional, that acceptance requires abandoning parts of yourself.
And again, this isn't a personal failing.
Not at all. It goes back to the brain science. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in The Body Keeps the Score, explains how trauma literally reorganizes the brain's perception of the world. It locks it into a kind of survival loop.
Still scanning for danger, even when it's gone.
Yes. So it looks like irrational adult behavior, crippling self-doubt, sudden panic attacks, excessive people-pleasing, maybe emotional detachment. It's often the perfectly rational, adaptive response of a nervous system that learned to survive in an environment that felt dangerous or invalidating.
So those responses are actually signs of strength.
They're signs of incredible strength. Brilliant, unconscious strategies developed when you were small and vulnerable and had no other way to protect yourself. But, and this is a crucial but, ingenious as those adaptations were for survival, survival is not the same thing as truly living.
Right. There's a big difference. And it's this unhealed trauma, these adaptations that shape who we think we are, leading us to wear the emotional masks or armor that we built way back then for protection.
Absolutely. These survival identities.
Can you give some examples of those?
Sure. A common one is the caretaker. This often comes from a home where the child had to grow up too fast, maybe looking after a parent who was ill or depressed or addicted.
The parentified child again.
Yes. So as an adult, this person becomes the dependable one, the one everyone leans on. But inside, they're often running on empty, feeling burnt out, resentful, and terrified of ever being a burden themselves.
I know people like that.
They all do. Then there's the overachiever. This often comes from a background where love or recognition felt conditional. You had to earn it through performance.
So success becomes the way to feel okay.
Exactly. But even with all the trophies and accomplishments, underneath there's often still a scared child desperately trying to prove they're finally good enough.
Wow.
And another one is the peacemaker, someone who grew up in a chaotic or high conflict home. To stay safe, they learn to smooth everything over, anticipate everyone's needs, avoid conflict at all costs.
The diplomat.
Right. But the cost is often losing touch with their own voice, their own needs, because conflict feels too dangerous.
So these roles, these masks, they helped us survive.
They did.
But they also disconnect us from our real self, from joy, from spontaneity.
Precisely. They keep us playing a role rather than living authentically. And these hidden dynamics, they inevitably show up in our closest relations. As the psychotherapist John Bradshaw put it so well, the wounded inner child contaminates intimacy in adult relationship.
Wow.
It's a strong word, but often accurate. And this is where attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, gives us such a useful framework.
Okay, attachments.
Yes, it basically says that our earliest bonds with caregivers create a blueprint for how we connect or struggle to connect later on. If a child had caregivers who were consistently loving, responsive, and safe, they tend to develop secure attachment. They feel okay with intimacy and independence.
That's the ideal, I guess.
It is. But for many trauma survivors, that's the case. So anxious attachment often develops when love felt inconsistent. Sometimes there, sometimes gone.
Unpredictable.
Right. As adults, these folks might be hypersensitive to any sign of rejection, need constant reassurance, fear abandonment intensely, and sometimes come across as clingy or demanding.
Okay. What about avoidant?
Avoidant attachment often stems from childhoods, where expressing needs led to rejection, dismissal, or punishment. So the child learns, suppress your feelings, don't rely on anyone.
Become fiercely independent.
Exactly. As adults, they tend to avoid emotional closeness, value self-reliance above all, and can seem distant or dismissive of others' needs. It's a protective shell.
I see. And there's one more. Right. Disorganized.
Yes. Disorganized attachment. This is often linked to more severe trauma, like abuse or neglect, where the caregiver was both a source of comfort and a source of fear.
That sounds incredibly confusing for a child.
It is. As adults, this can lead to very conflicting behaviors, desperately craving connection, but then pushing it away when it gets close. A real push-pull dynamic, often feeling chaotic inside.
So understanding your attachment style, it's not about putting yourself in a box.
Not at all. It's not about labeling. It's about awake. It's about seeing the blueprint. Because once you see the blueprint, you gain the power to start revising it.
And a big part of revising it must be tackling those limiting beliefs we formed back then.
Absolutely crucial. Many survivors walk around unconsciously living by these deeply ingrained rules or narratives. I'm not lovable. I have to earn love. My needs don't matter. If I show my true self, people will leave.
And these feel like facts, but they're not.
They're not fact. They're emotional conclusions drawn by a child trying to make sense of a confusing or painful world. But they persist, operating under the surface, shaping choices, and often sabotaging happiness and connection in adulthood.
So maybe the question for you listening is, what's the core story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you deserve? When did you first start believing that love has conditions? Or who or what situation taught you that your voice, your feelings weren't?
Asking those questions, really digging into them, that's the beginning of taking your power back. That's the start of the healing path.
So where does that path lead? How does one actually heal?
Well, it really begins by naming what did happen. And maybe even more importantly, naming what didn't happen.
The invisible absences again.
Yes, the love that was withheld, the validation you never received, the boundaries that weren't respected. Acknowledging that lack is huge.
Even if you feel like, oh, others had it worse.
Especially then. So many people minimize their own pain because of that comparison. But pain isn't a competition. Your wound is real. Your experience is valid, even if no one else saw it or acknowledged it.
Okay, so naming, then what?
Then We have to turn inward. And this isn't about blaming parents, though anger might come up and that's okay. It's more about understanding the impact of their limitations on us.
Recognizing the cost.
Yes, and often recognizing that our caregivers were likely carrying their own unhealed trauma. They were often traumatized children in adult bodies, just passing down the patterns until someone finds the courage to stop the cycle.
Breaking the cycle.
Exactly. And a huge part of breaking that cycle is learning to reparent.
Reparent yourself. What does that mean?
It means learning to give yourself, now as an adult, all the things you didn't get consistently back. Unconditional positive regard, consistent care, emotional safety, boundaries. Basically becoming the wise, loving, stable parent you needed when you were young.
That sounds...
It is hard. It's often deeply uncomfortable because our brains are wired to stick with the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. We resist change. We resist feeling those old hurts. But that discomfort, it's not the enemy. It's often the sign that you're right at the edge of transformation. It's the threshold.
That's a powerful reframe. Discomfort as a threshold. And you mentioned the body holding the score earlier. Alice Miller wrote about that too, didn't she?
She did, brilliantly. She said, the truth about our childhood is stored up in our body.
Yeah.
She knew that we can try to rationalize it away or suppress the memories or numb the feelings, but eventually the body speaks.
How does it speak?
Through things like chronic anxiety, depression, unexplained physical illnesses, addictions, repeating those same painful relationship patterns. The body's essentially screaming, hey, listen. Something needs attention here. It's time.
So the symptoms are signals.
They are signals, often desperate signals that deep healing is needed. And one of the most powerful medicines for that healing journey is self-compassion.
Self-compassion. It sounds simple, but maybe it's not.
It sounds simple, but for many survivors, it feels almost alien. Why? Because they learned early on that their worth was conditional, tied to performance or being quiet or pleasing others. So being kind to themselves, especially when they feel vulnerable or are struggling, it feels wrong, maybe even self-indulgent.
Like they don't deserve it.
Exactly. But self-compassion isn't weakness and it's not self-pity. It's a crucial tool for healing. Dr. Krista Neff's research shows that self-compassion actually activates the brain's caregiving system, the same system that lights up when we care for others.
Oh, interesting.
It helps soothe that harsh inner critic, it calms the body's stress response, and it creates the internal safety needed to even approach those difficult memories and feelings.
So how do you practice it?
It can start very simply, just acknowledging your pain, gently saying to yourself, this is really hard right now, or it's okay to feel this way. Even affirming, I survived something difficult and I'm here for myself now. These simple acts, repeated over time, literally begin to rewire the brain and the nervous system.
Rewiring kindness to yourself. So this whole journey, rewriting belief, healing the nerve, it sounds like it involves two main, creating safety and confronting the old.
That's a great summary. Yes. First, you have to actively create safety in your present life, both emotionally and physiologically. Your nervous system needs to learn experientially that vulnerability doesn't automatically equal danger.
How do you do that?
Through practices that work directly with the body and nervous. Things like somatic therapy, which is designed to help release trauma stored physically mindfulness, specific breathwork techniques, maybe finding a trauma-informed therapist or a coach, creating routines that feel grounding.
Okay, building that internal sense of safety. And the second part?
The second part is bravely, compassionately, confronting those core narratives, those old limiting beliefs about who you are and what you deserve. Really questioning, where do they come from? Are they actually true?
It reminds me of that Kierkegaard quote, something about understanding life backwards but living it forwards.
Exactly. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward. We can't change what happened in the past, but we can fundamentally change our relationship with the past. We can shift from seeing ourselves as broken victims to recognizing ourselves as resilient survivors who were shaped by experiences but are not defined by them forever.
Seeing ourselves as survivors, not...
Yes. And in this deeper work, this turning inward, you inevitably encounter your inner child.
The young.
Yes, that part of you that holds the original wounds, the unmet needs, the suppressed emotion, the part that never stopped hoping, maybe, to finally be seen, heard, held, to be told, you are enough, just as you are. You weren't too much. You weren't too sensitive. You deserved love and safety.
And connecting with that part is healing.
Deeply healing. And this isn't just, fuzzy psychology. There's science behind it. Neuroplasticity shows us that our brains can change throughout our lives. Beliefs can be updated. Identity isn't fixed. We can evolve.
The brain can change.
It can.
Yeah.
But it takes intention. It takes consistent practice. Healing isn't usually a one-time event. It's more like a daily practice of choosing to show up for yourself, of returning home to yourself again and again.
A daily daily practice of returning home. I like that. So maybe a final reflection point for you listening. What roles have you been playing, maybe for a long time, that just don't fit anymore? What masks feel heavy now? Which ones are you maybe ready to start taking off, even just a little bit? And who might you become? Who could you if you weren't carrying the full?
Powerful question.
There's this moment that can happen on dramatic, quiet, subtle, but it's this profound realization that the pain you carried for so long, it doesn't control you anymore. And your story, the one that maybe felt like a source of shame, it starts to feel like a source of, strength.
Yes, that's what psychologists call post-traumatic growth.
Post-traumatic growth. So not just recovery, but actual growth.
Exactly. While trauma absolutely rocks our foundations, it can also, paradoxically, initiate this incredible rebuilding process. It's not about going back to who you were before the trauma. It's often about evolving into someone, wise, deeper, more compassionate perhaps. Someone who's walked through that fire and come out the other side with a much more profound appreciation for life, maybe for relationships, for their own resilience.
So it changes you, but not just in negative ways.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Richard Tedeschi, who's done a lot of research on this, identifies 5 common areas where people report growth after trauma.
What are they?
A deeper appreciation for life itself, improved relationships, often with more depth and authenticity, seeing new possibilities for their future that they didn't see before, a real sense of increased personal strength, and for some, significant spiritual development or change.
Wow. So it's like an alchemy almost.
Yeah.
Transforming the lead of pain into something golden.
That's a beautiful way to put it, an alchemy. But it's important to say this growth doesn't happen automatically. It's not guaranteed. It usually happens through conscious choice.
The choice to face it.
The choice to face it, to process it, to make meaning from it, to stop letting the past define the future and instead integrate it into a new story, a stronger self.
It makes me think of that metaphor, a broken bone. When it heals properly, the point of the fracture can actually become stronger than the surrounding bone.
That's a perfect analogy. The human spirit can become more resilient right at the site of its deepest wounds, not because the wound magically disappears, but because we learn how to tend to it, how to integrate it, how to build strength around it.
Learning how to care for the wound.
Yes, and maybe this is the most powerful, the most liberating truth we can land on today. Your trauma is not your identity.
Say that again?
Your trauma is not your identity. It is something that happened to you. It shaped you profoundly, yes, but it is not the fundamental truth of who you are.
It happened to you. It's not you.
Exactly. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are not your trigger. You are the awareness that notices the trigger. You are not the limiting beliefs you inherited or learned. You are the one who holds the pen, the one who can rewrite them.
You are the one who can rewrite them. That feels like the core message.
It is.
And this power, this ability to redefine yourself, to rewrite your story, that's your birthright, isn't it?
It truly is.
This journey isn't about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about transcending it somehow, finding meaning, maybe even purpose within it, and becoming the intentional author of your own life forward.
Beautifully said.
Think about people who've done that, like Viktor Frankl, surviving the Holocaust, losing everything, yet finding meaning in suffering and becoming this incredible symbol of human resilience. He turned his deepest pain into his greatest power.
An amazing example.
So the final thought maybe for everyone listening is simply this. How might you begin to author your own story, starting right now, moving forward?